My name is Thomas Mealy, former executive director for the Harrisburg Authority. I left that position in the fall of 2006. I would ask for your indulgence today. Since I left Harrisburg, I haven't been involved in any particular activities. I was not asked to participate in the financial audit that is before you. There's only been one or two occasions in the past 6 years that I've even discussed the matter of any Harrisburg activities, and those were primarily proceedings like today. So,
is your mic on, Mr. Mealy?
It's green. I will get a little closer.
That's better. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do so with perhaps a failing memory, but I'll do the best I can do for you today.
Mike?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mealy, excuse me, am I correct that you served both as a city employee and as executive director of the Harrisburg Authority?
Yes, I did.
Isn't this a conflict of interest?
It didn't appear to be at the time. My duties were divided. I worked for the wastewater treatment facility. I was also deputy director for the Department of Public Works, as also as executive director.
Who did you report to? Did you take direction from Mayor Reed?
If I was working for the city, I would report to the director of Department of Public Works, and then above him would be certainly the mayor, Mayor Reed. For the Harrisburg Authority, I reported to the board of the Harrisburg Authority.
Now, Mayor Reed told us that the special projects fund was under the control and direction of the authority. Who set up, to the best of your knowledge, who set up this fund? How was it operated? What was the process to disperse the monies from the funds? And was Mayor Reed directly making the decisions regarding the uses of these funds?
Well, it was set up through board activity. I think records can be produced that will show that there's a motion that was by the board that created the special funds. That motion, I believe, listed the details that you're asking for, the protocol that would be used, and the best of my recollection is that requests would come in from the mayor to fund certain projects. The board would consider those, through board action, would approve those expenditures, and the authority would produce a check that would pay for those items.
Okay, thank you. Did you read the Buckhort's Horns 2003 incinerator study?
I'm sorry, I don't recall that.
Okay, because my next portion of that was that how did the authority, the city, come to terms with Buckhort's comment that the project was $50 million short in handling existing debt plus new debt?
Again, I don't recall the report. I don't deny its existence. I just don't recall.
Okay. In 2003, there were questions about potential conflicts of interest from members of the authority board. J. Bruce Walter of Rhodes and signed and sent you a June 26, 2003 letter about the conflicts of interest. What did you do with this letter? Did you share this letter with members of the authority board, in particular Fred Clark, as the forensic audit states he had a conflict of interest?
Senator, again, I don't recall the particulars of what you're talking about. Knowing myself, the procedures would be that...
We have a copy for you that we'll bring down for you. At the bottom of this, it said copy is handwritten, and
those are my
yeah.
That is my writing, and it's a copy to the board members.
Okay. So Fred Clark did get a copy.
Yes, well,
okay.
Whoever the board members were during that period of time.
Okay, thank you. How did Barlow come to the authority? And let me just amplify that. I'm especially interested in the board's involvement in the selection of Barlow, as we can find just one public action of the board, the November 16, 2000 approval of a $300,000 contract. However, we can find no formal public board approval for Barlow work that were paid well over $300,000. It appears you authorized this additional work and expenditures in your capacity as executive director. If yes, on what authority?
Well, first of all, your first question, who brought Barlow to the Harrisburg Authority? I believe that would be Andy Giorgione and Dan Lisby,
Okay.
as the ones that connected that. In regard to the actual expenditures, I, sir, do not have authority to make payments of any amount unless it has been approved by the board, either through a budget or through a requisition process.
So you're saying that the expenditures was approved by the board, and that's where you got your authority to do so?
Correct.
Okay. Was that made public?
I don't recall the particulars, I'm sorry.
Okay. How do you explain the lack of a performance bond in 2003? I mean, doesn't state law require performance bonds for construction projects?
Yes, it does. That was a point of contention among the professionals. We relied upon the professionals to make a determination that one was not required in this particular situation. And I'm not the attorney that made those decisions, but we relied upon their judgment.
Who in particular?
It was Andy Giorgione and Rhodes and Sinan as our solicitor.
Did the Harrisburg Authority have other projects for which it didn't require performance bond, and who advised you that a performance bond wasn't necessary for this project?
I believe, to the best of my knowledge, this was the only project we did not have a performance bond.
Okay. Did you believe any of the authority's bonds were self-liquidating? If not, did you share this with anyone?
Are any of the bonds self-liquidating? I believe that all our bonds were self-liquidating. The Harrisburg Authority not only dealt with the resource recovery facility, which is what we're here for today, but also was the owner of the Harrisburg Water as well as wastewater systems.
Okay, then who drafted the bond documents? Did you discuss any concerns with them as whether the bonds were truly self-liquidating? And did you believe revenues would exceed expenditures?
We relied upon the professionals in putting those documents together.
Anyone in particular?
Well, you had the financial advisor, you had Dan Lisby, who was at one point a city employee, but later a consultant to the authority. You had Andy Giorgione, who was ultimately involved in many of the decision makings. You had bond counsel and other professionals.
And my last question for you, sir, and thank you for your patience. What was it like to run the Harrisburg Authority while these financial transactions were being undertaken? Did you feel you were in control? Did you feel the board was in control? And why did you leave?
Interesting. Let me answer the last one first.
Sure.
Maybe that gives you the best explanation. I did not feel that the authority was going in a direction that was suitable to my beliefs and understanding. Rather than continue to battle and fight, and for the benefit of my health and well-being, I chose to leave.
Okay. Okay. And did you feel like you were in control?
No.
And did you feel the board was in control? And if you didn't feel like the board was in control, who was in control? Because we're just trying to get down to them.
Technically, we can say that the board was in control because the board has to approve the appropriate motions and so forth. But there was, truly, there was discussions with the city, between the city, the professional team, and the Harrisburg Authority Board.
Okay. Thank you. I'm through. Thank you, Mr. Mealy.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Mealy. And I think Senator Fulmer has probably addressed many of the concerns that I had. And in my prior life, I served as an executive director of a redevelopment authority and used to have to go before my board, and there was considerable dependence on me with respect to the votes that they had to take. And on the basis of your testimony here, I think that there were an awful lot of forces at work, in addition to your own as executive director of the authority, that influenced the final outcome of the votes taken by the board. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit. I know that you yourself are on the record, and it was actually during the CIT trial that you testified you had some concerns about the aspects of the incinerator transaction, red flags, as you said. Could you elaborate what your concerns were?
Well, I wasn't comfortable with the arrangements with that finance. They were not typical or customary to an authority. I was trying to push, if additional monies were required for the project, I would prefer to go the more conventional route with the bond issue and going through much like the other bonds of the Harrisburg Authority, as opposed to the manner in which the CIT loan was presented.
I see. The issue of guarantee fees and all the other transactions done under your tenure at the authority, was this typical of the bond issues that were conducted by the authority, to have these kinds of guarantee fees going to the what I would call the elected authorities that were providing those guarantees?
To the best of my recall, it was not uncommon for the resource recovery bonds to have guaranteed fees in them.
But only those?
That's what I say to the best of my recollection. I don't recall whether there was any associated with water or wastewater.
The Senator Fulmer already raised this issue regarding Barlow, and there was no competitive procurement process. There was no process to allow an objective opportunity for anyone else to come into the picture. The issues that evolved in dealing with Barlow under your tenure had them evolving from one role to another role to another role. At any point, did you express concerns to the board about I guess, the all-encompassing nature of that engagement with Barlow?
I think I can address that in two statements. First, I believe that Barlow, as an organization, underestimated the complexity of the project when they bid, and this is the benefit of hindsight. During the course of the construction of the project, I know I voiced my concerns regarding their ability to manage the project.
Understood. I think you've already made representations that there was an awful lot of external consultation regarding this issue of self-liquidating debt. The bonds issued in early 2003 to restructure the debt. Was there a discussion about whether or not these bonds could be considered self-liquidating, since at that point the facility had not been operating, or was certainly operating at a greatly reduced capacity? Was there dialogue among board members about the representation that was going to be made to DCED about the self-liquidating nature of this debt?
I don't recall.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. So, as a general follow-up to some of this, was the mayor calling the shots with the authority?
The mayor would meet on occasion with the members of the board to have certain discussions. So there were certain dialogues that would take place. Certainly, the mayor had certain influences, but ultimately the board had to take the appropriate votes.
Did he communicate things through you? Because when we had Mr. Clark here, he said that all information came to the board through you.
I don't think that's a fair assessment. Oftentimes, board members would attend the same meetings that I attended with the mayor. In fact, I would have to say there was very few meetings that we had with the mayor that I was present that a board member, the chairman, or some other representative of the board would be in that room.
How about a percentage here, then? How influential do you think the mayor was with the authority on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say?
Oh, I think he had a great deal of influence. onto the board of the Harrisburg Authority.
7 or 8, something like that.
Yes.
Do you know where the statutory authority came from to develop this fund that was in the authority's, excuse me, it was in the authority's control, but used by the mayor?
Special Project Fund?
Yes.
Are you referring to? I don't recall the statutory provisions that were there, but it was I'm certain that it was investigated by our solicitor at the time of this creation. I would point this board to go back to the motions that were adopted by the Harrisburg Authority at the time of the creation of that. Perhaps that would lead to any further records that may be on file with the Harrisburg Authority.
To follow up on a question Senator Fulmer asked about with the roads and sign and legal opinion that you were brought, my immediate concern when I read that, and we had Mr. Clark here with the last hearing, and I asked him directly about that, and he said that he had legal advice that said it was okay to do that. Have you ever seen any legal advice that said it was okay to vote that way, to vote on that contract with his affiliation with the Reynolds Company?
I apologize, I don't recall. I don't know one way or another.
But the secondary issue is, given that opinion, if Mr. Clark did what he did, how was the authority permitted to vote on this? I mean, if he voted on it, that was one issue. The second issue is, if the legal opinion says that a contract would be null and void if it was entered into, as long as a member of the authority was part of that, was in that position of conflict, why would the authority go ahead then and make that decision, knowing that it was the wrong thing to do?
I can't answer specifically your question, but I would say that if there was a conflict, I would expect that that conflict would have been exposed by the city solicitor. Or, excuse me, the authority solicitor.
The authority solicitor, okay. I guess one other quick item here is Mayor Reed wrote in a personal note that he directed to ask somebody if you had money hidden elsewhere. Do you know what he would have been talking about?
Could you repeat that, please?
Mayor Reed wrote in a personal note that he directed someone to ask you if you had money hidden somewhere.
Okay, well, I've never seen this document before. The mayor always accused me of trying to hide money from him. It was kind of a joke, but in some places it was a reality. The only place that I know this would apply is there were certain bond issues that the authority undertook. I apologize for not knowing the precise name of the transactions, but it had to deal with variable rates. And the Harrisburg Authority, because they were variable rate bond issues, understood the risk that they were getting involved with. So the authority created a pool of money to use only for the payment of debt should rate increases increase above what would be budgeted during a normal period of time. That's the only tie I can make to this comment. And the board took certain action on that at a meeting, and the money was restricted only to be used to make debt service payments.
Senator Fulmer had another question.
And just one follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Mealy. It's my understanding that Dan Lipsey also served for a period of time as a city employee while also working for the Harrisburg Authority. Is that true?
My recollection is no, in the way that you described it. Dan Lipsey was an employee of the city of Harrisburg. He was heavily involved with the resource recovery facility and was advisor to the Harrisburg Authority. When he left the employment of the city of Harrisburg, started his own consulting practices. Then he became a hiree of the Harrisburg Authority.
Did you support Mr. Lipsey's 2004 hiring? If not, how did he get hired?
I don't recall the details of the hiring and how it came down. Mr. Lipsey was perhaps, it was one individual that knew the most about that particular facility.
Did you support his hiring?
I can't say I supported it, but I can't say I opposed it as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mealy, thank you again for your time today. I'm just looking back on some other research that my staff did, and I'm trying to get a handle on the City Council Special Projects Fund. There have been a couple of correspondences back and forth. Can you talk a little bit about that? This was done, I think, by resolution. We heard in previous testimony they set up essentially a fund that was built and managed by the finance director with respect to City Council's actions and the distribution of dollars. And I guess I'm just trying to get a look at your understanding of the transactions between the authority and the city vis-a-vis the City Council Special Projects Fund. Could you talk a little bit about your memory of those transactions?
I don't think I can. You're making reference to the City Council Special Fund?
That's correct. But it was authority proceeds. Am I incorrect on that?
It may have been through, I'm not sure how the funds got to the city, but I can't speak on behalf of the city and the City Special Project Fund and how those funds were used. I did not play a role in that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I had to follow up to one of Senator Fulmer's questions originally. He talked about the competitive bidding, I believe. Didn't you bring that up, Mike? How did that come about that there wasn't competitive bidding for that project and that Barlow was just awarded the project? What was the discussion like at the time?
I believe professional services were probably introduced into this discussion. But beyond that, I can't state here today how it developed from there.
You don't recall whether there was a breakdown of the definition of professional services between engineering and the contract and then the construction portion?
I believe we relied upon the professionals to make that determination, and I believe they're the more appropriate party to ask.
Okay. We're a little ahead of schedule. We thank you very much for your time.